really excited to have you here once again. And yeah, let's talk about resistance as an answer to censorship and state control and oppression.
Exactly. Thank you, Effie. And now I would like to introduce our guests. Actually, is Christophoros Katsadiotis, Greek artist and engraver, Louna Sbou, co-founder and director of Oyoun, the cultural institution, Lamis Amar, actress, performer, and Michael Barenboim, public intellectual, as he said. Thank you all. So, welcome and thank you all. Really, thank you for being here. It's an honor for us to have you here, actually. And it was also very important for us as a group to invite people representing different sectors in art and culture, actually, so we can explore various aspects and experiences of what we call state violence, actually, and state control, even in so-called democratic states nowadays. So, we could start with a mini intro about the situation we all of us live here in Germany or in other European states. So in Germany and Berlin, especially over the last 2 years, actually since October 2023. We actually from the start of the genocide in Gaza, we have witnessed terrible state repression in many areas of public life, in workspaces or in demonstrations, violence in demonstrations. We have been unjust arrests here in the neighborhood also, in Zonenallee, where a woman or children, just for carrying Palestinian symbols like a kufiyya or something like the flag, the Palestinian, they were arrested in the first months of the genocide. And repression at universities also, on the streets and elsewhere. And of course, we have already seen the first signs of repression and state control also in the culture sector. Workers of culture sector have been dismissed from museums or cultural institutions because of their stance against Israel and the genocide, labeling them as anti-Semites, and artists have been cancelled, photographers, many people actually, so that also rewards, international rewards, were postponed because of the persons. For example, Adriana Sibli, the writer, she's supposed to be awarded in the Frankfurt Messe, in the Literature Messe 2023, actually in November, but her reward was postponed because she was Palestinian, actually. The timing for the state and the narrative of the state or the German society was not so cool. And her book, Minor Detail, details the apartheid and the Israel state and the violence of the Israel state against the Palestinian people in Palestine. So, yes, photography exhibitions being also cancelled, threats of cuts of public funding. If an institution or an artist expresses support for Palestine, we have also seen that. And that's all in Germany. And at the same time in Greece, the last years, where the political crisis continues to deepen, despite the government's effort to persuade the partners or Europe that the country is a best practice of democracy and economic wonder after the crisis 15 years ago. State intervention is also increasing. For example, the case of Christophoros, who is today with us, the removal of the art. He will explain it later. He will talk about it also later, what happened. The removal of the artwork of Georgia Lale. It was a Greek flag, actually, made from clothes of women who've been murdered from men, actually, in Greece. And her artifact was removed from the central consulate, Greek consulate in New York, after decision of the government, because the government and the state doesn't recognize, of course, the term feminicide or femicide. So the state ordered, the parliament ordered that the artifact have to be removed, actually. And many, many other cases happened also in Greece the last years, always related with religion, because the state in Greece with a religion the Orthodox Church are not separated, and so the Church has the power to censor, to make censorship, and to control the state, actually. Exactly. Within this context of rising censorship and authoritarianism, actually, I will start with the first question for you, generally. You can answer all of you if you want. What does artistic freedom mean to you, actually, and why it is especially important in times of crisis and war, like the time we are living now, actually? And what responsibility do you believe the arts and culture scenes holds during these times? Who wants to start?
The microphone is silencing me. I'm censored. Yeah, artistic freedom. Well, for me, as you introduced me, I'm Palestinian actress. Thanks. So I never had freedom in the first place. Like, I was talking with a friend last time. He's a filmmaker, and we were speaking about this and about me being here in Germany, how I ended up here, and I was saying that it's really so hard to be here and to be censored and cancelled again all the time. And he was like, but we never experience, as a Palestinian, we never knew what freedom is. So what is artistic freedom? I don't know. I started my first acting job was in Jenin refugee camp, and I was 21st years old. And I remember I had to drive from Haifa to Jenin every few days, back and forth. And doing this trip in occupied Palestine, crossing these borders, being stopped and interrogated every time by the soldiers on the checkpoints, and having them asking me, like, why would you act in Jenin? You have theaters in Haifa. So about this, no, we don't have theaters. All our theaters were being closed because of the content that we presented, because we cannot separate politics, our identity, from our art. And then it would go to kind of harassments, sexual harassments, like, oh, what is your costume like? Can you show us photos? It's stuff that I had to deal with while being in Palestine almost on a daily basis. And I remember, like, how I dealt with it as 21st years old woman. It was really terrible experience. But for us, I would do this trip and ignore what's happening on the checkpoints just to get into the theater and to act, regardless of what the play or the piece is about. Like, it doesn't matter. It can be about anything. So this itself was theater and art and acting in Palestine is act of resistance, because in the conditions we are in occupied Palestine, it's we do not have freedom. We do not know what freedom is, what freedom of speech is, but doing theater was act of resistance. Crossing these borders to get into the theater, to work with Palestinians from the West Bank, this was an act of resistance. Like, art itself was, the art that we presented wasn't important at all. So I don't know why freedom of expression, like, is important for here, but I know that it exists and it thrives in places where there is oppression. And this is the case everywhere, and we should continue and do it, of course. Yes. Do you want to say something?
Thank you. what was the question? Like what artistic freedom means to us? Okay, what it used to mean. I think. Can you hear me? Because I feel like. Yeah. Okay. I think. I think there's power in artistic freedom, or like there's power in the use of artistic freedom, especially in places that are considered like liberal democracy. But it's not like what happens. Well, what happened? I just want to make sure that it's brought up. What happened at Documenta 15, or with Oyoun, or like what's been happening ever since October 2023 is not new. Like there have been cancellations, defundings, censorship, etc., especially around Palestine before. One example is after the Last Sky, a Palestinian cultural festival that was also funded by the Senate under a previous senator called Tim Renner, whatever, from a different party. And there is. Are you aware of the case? Should I maybe bring it up really quickly, or like? So basically, it's a festival that was curated by Dr. Anna Esther Yunus and two other people, one Palestinian, one Iranian, and they hosted this festival at Ballhaus Nauninstraße. Extraordinary lineup, great program, everything went well. And then 2 weeks after the festival ended, a journalist whose name is absolutely irrelevant from Tagesspiegel published an article saying that he had attended one of the workshops that Anna Esther, one of the curators, were hosting, and claimed that she had made anti-Semitic statements and statements normalizing terrorism. As smart as she was, she had recorded everything. But by the time the senator had called in an investigator to look at the footage, the shitstorm was already out there. Like her name was branded, 80 articles were basically copy-pasting, just like journalism functions now. And then the senator had to resign, ambassadors got involved, etc. And the investigator came to the conclusion that the journalist was lying. By then, the damage was already done. And I think that's a practice that has been quite functioning in their favor. So people are also quite scared to do anything that might allow them to practice artistic freedom or freedom of expression because of that immediate consequence. So I think artistic freedom is delicate. It can be delicate, but it's limited in like various ways. Artistic freedom can be delicate in terms of like using art as a form. You okay? Using art as a form that might influence like public discourse. And one example is like a feminist, is like a feminist movement that started in Chile 2019 that completely influenced and shifted the public discourse around feminism, sexual violence, etc. And it was a public intervention. Made it to like a global phenomenon around like the understanding of feminism. ACT UP is also one example where the use of artistic freedom and using public spaces allowed for the shift of public discourse, even in terms of ACT UP is basically a movement that came out of the AIDS epidemic in the States, and that allowed then people who were infected to access healthcare. And it was artistic freedom that allowed them to deliver a message that might not necessarily be words per se, but that might impact people and the way they think, if that makes sense. But it is selective. Artistic freedom seems to be very selective, especially now. But it can be, I feel like there are options where that can still be used, not necessarily now and not when it comes to Palestine, or like in funded spaces, but yeah. I think we need to just reinforce it as well.
I think it's very important to have the freedom of expression, especially in art. It's also our job. We are artists, and what we have to do is to express our thoughts, our problems, our dreams, how we see this world. So it's like an obligation for us to express ourselves. And otherwise, whatever, in School of Fine Arts, we are learning a language to be able to express. This is the expression is the most important thing. And especially when we see things that we are not okay with what we see around us. Are happening terrible things, and it's like a shame not to speak. We have to do it, especially when we feel by heart, by instinct, that we have to say something.
Good evening. Good evening. I mean, a lot was said already, so I don't want to repeat what was already said. I mean, I think the only thing I can add is that when you speak of artistic freedom, you also always speak about its limitations, and it's important to be aware that there are always limitations, but at the same time that artists tend to want to test these limits and go always a little bit further than they are supposed to. If you don't do that, then you're not making use of artistic freedom. Because if you're only operating and working inside the frame of what is supposedly acceptable to the public discourse, then you're not really contributing anything of any value whatsoever. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, I mean, that you alluded to earlier about the kind of repression on art and academia in Germany, especially in the last 2 years. I think it's important to mention something like the database index of repression that categorizes all the known instances since then in Germany. It's also a project that will expand to other European countries, but for now is limited to Germany. There are, I think, in the database now, 766 instances since October 2023 of artists and academics and or others being either deplatformed, cancelled, or whatever, and detailing the circumstances into which this happens. And I think it's important to study this quite extensively, so as to know also where it's possible to find ways to overcome the kind of barrier that especially the Gaza genocide has shown us very clearly that it's there. And I think that's maybe something that we should all, be aware of more.
Great.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was, great contributions. We are dabbling in a lot of topics at the same time, and I think it would be nice now to go and try to do some more personal questions. And how about we start with you, Christophoros? So, going back to this discourse about religion censorship in Greece, so I would like for you, if you want to, of course, to tell us a bit about what happened, like your instance of censorship. I'm talking about an exhibition that Christophoros did, and not only him, but he contributed to an exhibition, and his work has been vandalized actually by members of the Greek parliament. And as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, you tried to reframe it after it happened. You had your artworks laying on the ground for some time and tried to make that into an artistic statement too. Could you talk to us more about not only the event, but how to deal with, how did you deal with, and how will you continue to deal with this thing following you? And what about reframing it? Can it be reframed in a positive way? And do you think also that it has shaped maybe your understanding of artistic freedom and its limits?
Thank you for the question. After the event of 10th of March, that member of the parliament get inside and take off my 4 engravings from the wall of the National Pinakothek, and he throw it and break it. I didn't feel especially it was against my face or against my work. It was against democracy. It was against the constitutions of my country. So after 2 months, I had the same problem in Thessaloniki. I went to speak to a congress of educators of fine arts, and I had the attack when I get outside of a taxi to go to speak from 30, 40 persons, and I need it was the police get inside through between me and this group, and really I don't know what is going to happen without this. So I feel, what kind of democracy is this when I need police protection to express another opinion? And why, maybe some people, they will say, why you use religion things, or because when we are in a difficult moment in our lives, unconscious, we are asking a miracle. We are asking something to change from our tradition. We say, "Αχ, Παναγιά μου," λέμε. So I see the news, I see the problems around me, and I'm wondering how, after all these wars, what we see around, and all these really difficult moments they have, many people around the world, how the face of Jesus or religion's faces are continuing to be smiling, not smiling, but very calm. So I wanted to say, it was a way to speak with them. It was a way, and a way to communicate, to create conditions more not friendly, but humanities, more like you speak to a friend, and you want to speak by heart, face to face, look at your eyes, and say really what you feel without to control your thoughts. It means to be free, to have the freedom to say, I don't like what I see around me. I'm looking for something I'm looking for a friend, I'm looking for a fellow, I'm looking for a solution, for something more optimistic. And I try to not forget something, because very often we had the question, where are the limits of the arts? And I don't know really where are the limits. Maybe we can search inside us to find something more psychoanalysis way. The limits of art are defined by art itself, not by parliament or by law. If I could go back in time, I could create exactly the same works, because I owe it first and foremost to myself to be honest. I want to express precisely what I want, not what other tells me to do.
Thank you so much for this. And yeah. Thank you for opening up about this. And yeah, my last question maybe would be, as not only as an artist, also as a citizen maybe in Greece, how do you feel that religion, religious symbols, maybe even symbols like it was the case for Lale, symbols like the Greek flag, how do you feel that these kinds of institutions and these kinds of traditions, how do they maybe work in Greece? Are they the ones putting the limits? Is tradition putting limits to art? And how does that compare to other countries that you have been in or lived in or, spent time there?
we cannot compare the level of censorship in each country follows it is coming from another culture. For example, in Islam, the control of censorship is something that we cannot describe, I think. So, and I heard, I don't remember from where, the term fundamentalist democracy. Something strange for my ears. I don't understand what kind of democracy is this. Something that it puts you the limits and creates, I don't know. I see only problems. We used to grow up with the traditional of symbols. I think in Germany, for example, you respect more the freedom of expression and to be able somebody to be free to believe wherever he wants somebody.
Maybe more than in Greece.
More than in Greece, yes.
I was just there.
Yeah, that was it from my questions for now. Yeah, should we move on to
Exactly.
the next question?
Thanks, Efin. Thanks, Christophoros. Like, yeah, I said, in Germany it depends on what kind of expression you have in order to be or not to be censored, actually. Yeah, but I will go on to Lamis, actually. Christophoros said he was accepted this violence and this intervention of far-right parliaments and so, and racism also somehow. And you, Lamis, as you said, you've been born and raised in Palestine, in Haifa, actually, and you lived here, and you lived the last 5 years, 6 years in Berlin. And here in a land, a country, in that times also, you have to face again a kind of racism or of censorship against you as Palestinian. And I would like to ask you, how has your personal history actually shaped your artistic voice, also here in Germany? And what challenges have you faced here as a Palestinian actress, speaking out loud also about your land and Palestine and what's going on there? And what challenges did you face here, if you faced something?
Yeah, yeah, I'm just tired. Yeah, what did I want to say? Now you now you yeah, I never, honestly, I never wanted to be an artist. I always wanted to be a lawyer. That was the plan that was made for me by my parents. You know, it's like that. You're not supposed to decide sometimes. No, but I also wanted to be a lawyer. As a kid, I used to accompany my father to his trips to the Israeli prisons, and I've watched him volunteering, and going to talk with Palestinian prisoners that some of them had no lawyers or even trial process. And I remember him coming back, and I was sitting waiting for him in the car, and I saw my father in tears. It was really one of the only situations where I saw my father crying, and I understood really how important it is to do direct action for Palestine, for our people. So I knew that I always wanted to be a lawyer because of this, because he really inspired me. And we believe like a third generation of the Nakba, art is not a part of the plan, you know. We know that we have to get professions and jobs that really would help Palestinians and with direct action. So, and we also, because the military rule that we had in Palestine, the 48 until 67. There was no theater scene, maybe big theater scene, but we had a lot of writers and poets, and we saw them executed one by one, like Ghassan Kanafani, that was murdered in Beirut by the Mossad. And we know Ghassan Kanafani never held a weapon. He was a person that always had his pen and he wrote stuff. He was part of the movement with George Habash, but we know that he was killed because of his writings. Mahmoud Darwish, the biggest Palestinian poet, was living in exile. And others, Rashid Hussein, that was also living in exile in the 60s and was found murdered maybe in his apartment. His apartment was burned, and so on and so on. So we experienced this second generation of the Nakba of artists and poets that were executed and hunted by the Israeli occupation forces. So for me, it was really the last thing that I would think of is to be an actress. And then I told my parents, okay, I decided to be an actress, and they were like, "What? You were supposed to to do something else." So I was like, yeah, either I would do guerrilla fighting or be an actress. Which one do you choose? So they were like, oh no. Then okay, then be an actress. No, this was joke. Not funny. So of course, like, yeah, being an actress, I know that I have a duty towards my people, and I want to represent my people in the best way possible. And we carry this since we are kids. And of course, also here, like, yeah, I face, of course, silencing all the time since I started to act. But it never stopped me, or I don't know how to explain it, but the trauma is not healed. It's ongoing. So I didn't even have the time to process it or to think of it, like, how should I deal with it? It's part of who we are. It's part of our games. When we were kids, we used to, like, take off the Israeli flags, and resistance is part of our game. So yeah, I'm here and I'm trying to do the best for my people. My theater play that I was supposed to perform in Teatro Discount was cancelled after the 7th of October. I was told, we are against Hamas, the context has changed. So I was like, yeah, what to do? Of course, I would find other place, and I performed it eventually. Yeah, did I answer the question? Yeah, okay. If there's
No, that's great. Lamis, you told everything, actually. And you answered also my second question, yes, about your people and how you maintain your connection with your people in Germany through your art, and you're trying also to do it. So I will make another question, actually, the last one. What would you like the German audience, your German audience, to understand about the lived reality of Palestinians, actually, both in Palestine and diaspora?
Good luck. Good luck with the answer. What I want the German audience to understand. To be honest, I don't feel any connection to Germany or Germans, or that I want them to understand anything. I just. It's hard. Yeah. I mean, no, now seriously, honestly, I know that part of the people everywhere, like a big percentage of the people, I don't know how much exactly here, but they're just simply not interested in politics, human rights. and what's happening around them in the world. So, but I was shocked, to be honest, by actors and theaters, art institutions, journalists, that, you know, we're used that in Palestine or other places in the world, we have a duty to tell the truth, at least, like what is happening around us, to represent the spirit of our times, you know? And I went maybe 3 months ago to the Schaubühne Theater, and I watched a play about a Jewish German doctor in the 30s that was hunted by the German government, and the play was really nice. Was a good play. It was about 3 hours, but I went out and I was like, what the fuck? How does it represent anything that we're experiencing right now? And they were like very proud of showing this kind of stories, and they feel good with themselves. But then I asked the director, like, how could you do this? Like when the war in Ukraine started, all the theaters had statements. We're against the war in Ukraine. All the cinemas showed statements, and now you're doing this about a doctor that is hunted by the Nazis, and you're not mentioning any Palestinian doctor from Gaza that is being raped to death right now. How can you not mention this? Like, how can you be so disconnected from the reality, from what's happening around you? So really, I'm just shocked again and again by the art scene in Germany. And I don't know, honestly, I don't know how can I contribute to this anymore. I just feel I don't have, sometimes I feel I really don't have the power anymore to take part of this whitewashing also the institution, and even advocating for Palestine in this kind of institutions. Yeah, I hope people, at least artists, will have the courage, as any artist in the world and journalists, and at least to say that the minimum that should happen right now is to stop arming Israel. That's the minimum that we should have here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great answers. You covered a lot of ground, almost answered my next question to everyone. So we're loving it. Thank you. But I think also, like, you know, nevertheless, part of the question is still relevant, maybe because we chose you all from different, you know, backgrounds and different art forms, so that we have different insights maybe to the same problems or to similar problems. And I'd like to ask all of you, maybe if you can talk about, through observation, personal experience, but also how you see other fellow artists working around you in your fields. How is this climate of fear being, like, you know, how is it being bred in the cultural sector in Germany, in Greece, in whichever countries you have been to and would like to express anything about this question? How does this mechanism of fear work, and how do people internalize it, do you think, in your field?
I would like to add something that maybe it's interesting, the point that censorship, it's not only about the things are connected with religion. For example, as Greece, the Greek state, and the most of the countries in Europe is supporting Israel, it's not possible to hear the news or what we learn. I'm sure they try to make the news more shining, more illustrated, more nice to our ears. I think censorship is connected with many, many things, and to control the most of the people, so it's more easy to take decision.
Yeah, of course. Of course, it's a wide issue. That's why we're trying to, widen it and, of course, talk about everything. And it's the Palestinian genocide and the way that the media is portraying the situation, as you're saying, it polishing it over sometimes for it to be maybe even ignored and to focus on other issues is not like a huge issue. Of course, a European issue. It's an issue for everyone who has a heart, is alive, and tries to live with dignity and with knowing that there are things outside of our own reality that are happening, and they feel painful even though we're not in Palestine right now. So yeah, that's why the question was more like, how can one maybe what is this fear, and how are people stopping to talk? How are we bringing artists as a society to stop talking about issues that are so humane and deeply, have to do with our humanity? How is it happening? How are you observing it?
Yeah, it's a complicated question. I think what you said is completely true. There's a complete lack of any kind of humanism and even solidarity in our fields that is so glaring and so strong that it makes one kind of want to not have anything to do with it. I think that's true everywhere. There's no solidarity among journalists. There's no solidarity among medical professionals. There's no solidarity among artists. Don't forget, art is being created in Gaza now too. It's not there's no solidarity in all of these fields. So we this is something that we've been observing generally. And as for, I mean, these kind of the question of this mechanism, I think it's very hard to say, but I think it might be useful to use something as a case study that we all know happened, which was Francesca Albanese's visit in February to Germany, where she was supposed to speak at 2 universities in Munich and in Berlin, and also another event here in Berlin, which all 3 went through a similar process of kind of first the invitation and then the retraction. I think it's an important part of it, is that it's not just that we say no, it's that we say yes and then we say no, right? The kind of play between some politicians, some journalists, and some lobby group officials, including also sometimes the embassy, the Israeli embassy, that coordinated pressure was put upon the FU, for example, here. I mean, this was in the news. I'm not sharing any particular insight. This was in the news that the phone calls were placed, threats were made, threats of I mean, in the news article, either the mayor of Berlin or the Wissenschaftssenatorin, one of them said, I quote approximately, "I am sure the FU will take the right decision." That's an almost direct threat. It sounds like from a mafia movie because it's the same tactics. And I think if then we see how, like, also a private venue like the Kühlhaus was pressured into canceling the other event, and another venue had to step in, the Junge Welt, to make it possible for the event to take place. The massive police presence on site, including, so the FU event then was moved to Boom in Kreuzberg, and the students of the FU had organized a room to just watch the live stream. So that meant that you had 150 or 200 policemen at Boom with the big trucks and the big shoulders and the big thing, the whole, and you had the same 150 at the FU, although they were just watching the stream, right? They marched into the university. It's intimidation, and in both the Boom and in the Junge Welt, the police insisted on being present on site, so not just around the building, but having 4 or 5 policemen in the event, including a translator, because they wanted to make sure that no speech crimes were being committed, not only by the people speaking on the panels, but also by people in the audience. So I think it's just, I mean, to answer your question, basically to use this as a case study is quite revealing, because all the things that we know happen with other events in a more loose and untied way here happened in a very coordinated, short time. And it gave us the possibility to observe and learn how this kind of functions, so that maybe next time we'll know more how to counter this kind of thing. Yeah.
Want some more? Sorry.
Thank you. I think we have case studies that go a few decades back, and history does repeat itself. Is that a live stream? No. So my thing is, I feel Germany, that's already the answer to the question. It's like the German phenomenon is silence and complain, hide behind the curtains, and only then show up and say, when it was over, yeah, what should we have done? And I think it works perfectly in a place like this country, where you look for some examples that might be leading a movement, or like an institution or an artist group, whatever that might be. And then people will be under fear, and under fear you can mass manipulate them. So I think the question is not necessarily like why this is happening, but I think how you can break it. And I mean, BDS is a movement that's the most nonviolent, and it's been criminalized as an extremist organization or movement, even though it's just an idea that is put in practice. But it is a very efficient way to like motivate people to counter anything or anyone that might benefit the genocide and everything we stand against. If that makes sense.
We have a few cases. Great, thank you all. I will not say that now in the microphone, not yet. So, thanks. You have some questions meanwhile, or we have some questions to Louna and Michael, and then we will give you the microphone also to make some questions, actually. So, Louna. Michael referred to events that we cancelled or from police intervened, and so, and you are also best practice about what happened the last 2 years. You are right. What happens now is happening many years ago. Actually, there are best practices, but now it's highlighted and it's more intense somehow. And the incidents are many actually, for the time they happened. So, as the co-founder and director of Oyoun, your institution have faced these state accusations of anti-Semitism. You've seen your funds cutting from the state because you are anti-Semites, probably, and for taking a pro-Palestine stance. And how did this experience affect your work as an institution?
I want to know, maybe raise your hand if you're aware of Oyoun and like the defunding. So some people might not be aware. I'm just going to say something very briefly. So there's a physical space nearby Hermannplatz that's owned by the Senate since the 90s. And in like 2019, the previous senator from the leftist party wanted to have something that is sexy, queer, radical come in after 30 years of a space that was rather dedicated to like global music. And then we applied as an extension of a space we had before in Wedding, a community space called Bekesh. So our concept was very clearly anti-colonial, very clearly anti-racist, very clearly unexceptional, also including aspects of Palestine, which is one, I think, could be one indication that they might not have read our application properly. So it was quite clear. And in 2000, so we took over. We won the tender. We took over the space. It's like 6 floors, 4,000 square meter, premium location, massive potential. But we only got a 2-year funding, like a project funding, which is the only space in Berlin as a space that's owned by the Senate that is not structurally or institutionally funded, which is also another indication that we were just kept on a short leash. I'm just looking at your faces to see if you can follow, or if you're like doing this, then I can go more in depth. Sorry? Slower? Oh, okay. Thank you. What was my point? So anyways, we had a 2-year funding confirmed, so for 2020 and 2021. In the summer of 2021, noted we've had an average of 500 to 600 events a year already then, even though it was COVID. Half of them were offline, half of them were online. So there's one event out of 600 that where the senator called. I mean, this is public information now, and I'm at a point where I'm like, I don't care. Like, so Klaus Lederer called and basically said, if you don't cancel that event, then you will see if we can continue the funding or not. And I was like, which event are you even talking about? And then he said it was an event, a panel discussion in a small room that might maybe fit 80 to 90 people around the cancellation of Palestine. And I was like, what is the problem exactly? And he said, the Jewish Voice for Peace is the problem. And I was like, why is that the issue? And they said, because they support the BDS movement. And I was like, and? Like, why is that illegal? There's only a resolution that's legally non-binding. And he's like I said, if you don't cancel, then there will be no extension of funding. So we go to the team, and because we had, like, at that point, 10 to 15 people who were not EU citizens and whose status were linked to the employment with Oyoun, we let the team, like my colleagues, decide how to move forward. And we're like, okay, maybe we will give in now, and then we make a statement. We get the 4-year extension, and then we can maybe, which now we know in retrospect that might not have been the case, actually hold our grounds. We cancel that event. We support them in different ways. And then we get the 4-year extension until end of 2025, like next year, December. Things happened, new elections. So in 20 years of Berlin being run by the leftist, by a leftist party, it's moved to CDU, which is conservative right-leaned, I would say. And we reached out to Joe Cialo and Sarah Whittle-Wilson, and we're like, okay, even though we only represent 0.01% of the overall budget, we want you to know who we are, what we do, and also the Jewish Voice for Peace is going to organize a 20-year anniversary celebration on November 4th, 2023. Long story short, we have a call, and someone's in that call called Hannah Dunnell, who was running the communication department at the Israeli embassy for 18 years. She was called into that meeting together with the state secretary and a bunch of other people. And again, they said, hey, maybe you want to reconsider. I mean, we introduced the concept, and they're like, oh, Oyoun, great concept. We love anti-racism, blah, blah. But the Jewish voice. And I'm like, what is the problem? And Hannah Dunnell literally said, I have a recording for internal purposes. She literally said, if you host the Jewish Voice for Peace, then Oyoun is not a safe space for Jews. Then later, in another call, basically they said, go think about it and then come back with a decision. And our decision was very clear. We will continue, because we've also made it very clear after they forced us to censor this event in 2021, we will no longer tolerate their censorship or their violence or their whatever pre-claimed cautious measurements, whatever. And then in the next call, Sarah Whittle-Wilson, who was the state secretary back then and who is now the senator, also there's proof that this actually happened. She said, artistic freedom ends for you if it becomes politically too overwhelming for us. Meaning, if you cause us any issues around like the claim that you want to practice artistic freedom and it makes us uncomfortable, then you'll be the one suffering. The event went on. 2 days later, the senator back then, Cialo, announced that they would defund us. And then in December, we were defunded. They couldn't evict us because of like legal, we had 2 different contracts. One was for the house and one was for the funding. But like 32 people within 8 days had to be, like all contracts had to be terminated, which is illegal. You can't let go of 32 people overnight. But yeah, what was your question? All right. So like this has been happening, and I think you want to ask another question?
I have a last question, actually, because I suppose you're gonna love here. So, what do you expect from institutions and audiences to help protect artistic freedom and to resist this autocracy of politicians and the state itself, actually?
Say it again. What is it?
How to fight back, basically, how to solve this issue, like that you hinted at before. Maybe the question to center on is how to solve this, how to react institutionally, personally, as an artist, as a human, how to fight against this fear and against this silencing and against this agendas, basically, I guess.
I feel like there are different ways to go about it, but maybe we can, because I saw a lot of people nodding their heads. You are aware of the anti-BDS resolution in 2019 that was passed. So it took 2 years for 20 institutions, including, I think, Goethe Institute, etc., like big names, Kampnagel, to publish a statement that said, we don't want to make an opinion, we don't have an opinion about BDS, but it's censorship to forbid or like to prohibit the BDS movement, which is true. It is active censoring of people's personal or like artistic freedom. It's an attack on artistic freedom, a very obvious one. Back then, people got together, big institutions got together to make that statement, and it was lingering. But then what happened at Documenta 15, and then later Oyoun, which also like gained, I think, international attention. Back then, everyone should have woken up and be like, okay, fuck, if they come for them, like migrant-owned, migrant-led, queer, intersectional, marginalized, precarious, etc., then they would definitely come for us. But again, like that's a German phenomenon to think that it's a very individualistic society, and sectors function like that too. I think had then maybe 100 institutions, 150 individuals, artists gotten up and said, okay, this is not okay. We don't have to agree with what we do politically or the programming or the content. We don't necessarily have to agree that they host the Jewish Voice. It's absolutely irrelevant, but it is an attack on artistic freedom, and it is an attack on the space, and it is an attack on the movement, and it is an attack that is racistly, like fundamentally racist, because other institutions, organizations that were maybe not necessarily Cutie BIPOC centered got away with a lot of different things. I think we just need to acknowledge that there is solidarity that is silent. There are different forms of solidarity, and I acknowledge that sometimes someone would come and be like, oh yeah, we really want to support you, but we can't do it publicly. I'm like, okay, fine, then organize in the background. You know, go and speak to Giorgialo, try and get a mediation session, try and get an appointment. And then like even people in super high ranking positions where like, I want to make this work, because if Berlin does that, if Berlin is able to defund a space and basically let go of 32 people overnight, anyone in the whole country, if not Europe, can do that, because Germany functions as a blueprint and Berlin functions as a blueprint in Germany. But people were too scared to even touch that subject. It was artistic freedom became like this irrelevant gray zone where, when it comes to Palestine, no. Everything else, fine. Like, we can talk about anti-racism, we can talk about anti-colonial practice and curating, whatever, but not when it comes to Palestine. And that's the biggest issue. Because it's maybe Palestine now, but it's going to be queer rights, it's going to be intersectionality, it's going to be feminism next. And that's something that we should have been aware of back then already. Not to say it might be too late, but like we need to be a lot more radical, and I think non-violence is fine, but there is a limit to it too. Thank you.
Thank you, Louna. Thank you all. Actually, I had one question for Michael Barenboim, but he answered it somehow a few minutes ago, and Louna also, and Lamis somehow, and Christophoros also. So I will proceed to the last question generally for all of you before we proceed with the Q&A. And you can start, Gerne, because, for example, how do you resist the state, you personally, and or your arts, and all forms of oppression through your art, through your acting, and how can the cultural sector in general, including cultural institutions like you, like Oyoun, artists, audiences, build stronger alliances and mount effective resistance to defend freedom of expression against this state narrative, like Germany or Greece with religion, and every state intervention, actually. For example, Michael, to start with you, you have the great projects, the Middle East Divan Orchestra also, or the Make Freedom Ring, with other musicians. It's like a collective, where you try to bring the awareness in the audience about what's going on. And are there other ways in order to resistance, to bring the people and the institution, the culture sector to resistance, to make really resistance against this violence of the state?
You alluded to Russia-Ukraine as a kind of counterexample where our industry was very active in organizing charity concerts, events, and etc. And I always say when you did that, it was like being with your back to the wind, with the wind helping you along, because what you were doing was part of state policy. When you do it for Palestine, it's like facing the wind, because what you're doing goes against state policy. So every step of the way is very difficult and cumbersome. We organize these concerts ostensibly to, of course, raise funds for charities and other organizations that can do some good in Palestine, mainly Gaza. Also, we do this so that we, as you said, also we raise awareness for the question of Palestine as a question of human rights and justice, because this was also mentioned. I don't remember which one. The question of Palestine has a tendency to disappear from the news very quickly. Even now, we could notice it now when there was the 12 days of Iran and Israel. The news on Gaza was almost non-existent. So you had to really search very extensively to find, news of what was going on, especially like concerning, killings on these so-called aid sites and the kind of baby formula thing, that the baby formula was running out and all these things. So that's another aspect. And the third aspect, which I find very important, is that we always have Palestinian musicians play. Not only, but also, so that it doesn't become part of what's dangerous, I think, when we all do things that are ostensibly for, the question of Palestine is a question of human rights and justice, is that if we don't put Palestinians, if we don't do it with Palestinians, and if Palestinians don't take the active and also conceptual role, we are contributing to the silencing that we're actually trying to prevent, right? So that's a very important aspect of this as well. I also co-organize with a Palestinian colleague of mine a talk series that we do at Lettres Étage, where we interview Palestinian academics, artists, intellectuals, etc. And I'm part of the Association of Palestinian and Jewish Academics, which was launched in January and which is starting to do many interesting projects, including a symposium, the first time a symposium on the 20th of July at Sbou. So basically, what I'm trying to say is I'm doing all of these things with the same idea behind it, which is that how do we guard ourselves against burnout and against exhaustion? Because of course there's not so many of us that are doing this kind of work. So how do we make sure that we don't completely burn out while we do it? Well, the only answer I could think of is to create structures and projects that could run even if parts of the people are completely exhausted and drained. So we're planning concerts, and some of us might be really on the edge of, but the concert is it's on, it's scheduled, it's on. You have to do it. Same with the talk series. It happens every month. We do it once a month. Tired or not tired. You have to read the material. You have to prepare the thing, and that's just how it is. And I think that's the only way I could think of to make this work. As for how to, like, the question of how to resist against against this kind of very oppressive discourse surrounding the question of Palestine, I think every opportunity any one of us has to beyond doing projects like this, to even just speak out, to take action, to just make some very basic things that in the German kind of discourse get lost completely. Very basic things. Palestinians have lived on this land for centuries, and then they were forcibly displaced, killed, and their rights taken away. I mean, this is a fact. This is not my genius insight. But to say this in Germany is already some kind of a crazy thing, or to always stress how Germany's historic responsibility, which is always taken as a reason to support Israel. Germany's historic responsibility is rooted in the Genocide Convention on the responsibility to prevent genocide. That's Germany's historic responsibility. This came out of Germany's actions. So that, and to always insist on what these things actually mean. But beyond this, I really don't know. You're next.
Oh, okay. For me, there's no option, no other option. Like resistance is part of the thing, and I remember as kids, like we knew that about the Nakba, the ongoing Nakba also. So part of the game was, what you remember when these cassettes, when this game was invented for kids, like we could record ourselves and play it. So we as kids, as Palestinian kids, we used to record our grandparents to talking about the Nakba, because we knew that our existence is resistance. They don't want us there. We see it in the statistics that were even published in the Haaretz. We really live in Palestine around the scum of humanity, I would call Israelis. So for us, it was really part, resistance is part of our identity. I don't know how to answer this question, honestly. Did I? Yeah? I'm just so tired. Maybe we should open for the questions.
So we can give now the microphone for questions if you have Q&A. Έχει ο Σάκης. Δώσε μικρόφωνο για... Is there any question?
Please raise your hand and we will come to you with the microphone if you want to ask anything, clarify something, give some ideas about how to resist, how to create solidarity. If you don't want to, that's also fine. But we will give you some moments to think about it.
Thank you. The question was raised: what artistic expression can actually influence, or what it means. And I think with artistic expression goes a sense of solidarity. And with solidarity, there comes also the need to use your privilege. And this is like from a German perspective, I believe. And I think Germany especially has a very hard time to realize this, or hasn't realized the fact that privileges are there to be used and should be used for acts of solidarity. So, and this is not only in the artistic field, but also in society in general, I believe, from my point of view and from what I have observed. And of course, this lies in historical, internalized idea that has not been resolved, in my point of view, and that is, yeah, that's one of the roots of white supremacy, that that rules over the ideas of a solidaire society instead of creating it. So I just wanted to add up that I don't really have a question. That's pretty much it.
Thank you for your input. That was, yeah, thank you so much. Any other inputs or questions?
Okay. First, thanks all. This was really, really interesting insights. What I wanted to say and ask is that first of all, it's important always to say that Palestinian genocide is mostly based on the German guild that is weaponized nowadays from the Zionistic state, but it's also a theme of colonialist, Occidentalism, and all this mindset of only Western civilization is worth of, and they can decide on where everyone else in the world can live or not live. And what the question is about that is, what do you think that we as part and members of the Western society should do to support your cause against this colonialist mindset? And the second thing about art is I had this thought of we always find some ways through art to adapt even to censorship. And the most common example is how we switch the Palestine flag with the watermelon, and this becomes a symbol. And I would like maybe some insight of what is the power of symbolism that art has in its core, and against censorship.
No, I mean, I can maybe refer to the first part of the question. Just, I think that it's very important to understand also in some of the vocabulary that we use that we are, of course, from here, so to speak. Take a term, for example, like the Middle East. What does that mean, and what does that say? Are we talking about a certain area of the world, but we're actually talking about us, because we're talking about looking from where we are to the east, but only to the middle. So not to the far east, but to the Middle East. So it's looking from here. It's looking from Europe. The term is already kind of a Eurocentric term. That's why some people use what is it? West Asia, North Africa, WANA, because that's it's a little bit less Eurocentric. And I mean, otherwise, I mean, there's other ways that we sometimes have to question just the way we speak about the other in the West. It's something Edward Said, for example, writes a lot about, Orientalism, and so the kind of the way that people in Europe look to the other, to the Orient, and looking from a point of view of we are civilized, and these are the backward kind of people that don't understand anything, and to maybe always use as an example, that's what an example I like to use, always to remember, if it wasn't for these others, we would be calculating our supermarket checks in Roman numerals, which I can tell you is no joy at all. We owe to, quote unquote, the Orient some of the greatest discoveries of humankind, and these things need to be just maybe stressed a couple of more times.
Well, for us, symbols was always important, because it was the only way we could, under occupation, express ourselves. And the symbol of the watermelon, I don't know if you know the story, but it came because the Palestinian flag was illegal, like many other things. So we had to create other way to present this identity of Palestine. So the water flag was invented. And Israel was very irritated from these symbols. I remember once I heard the story, it was after Oslo, I think, in 91. One guy from Akka hanged the Italian football team flag, and he was arrested because the colors were green, white, and black. So yeah, like the watermelon symbol, like honestly, here it's not illegal to raise the Palestinian flag. So I feel not yet. So these symbols, it's nice. It became trend, but we can raise the Palestinian flag. Like those symbols were created because of reason. So that's how we also resist oppression, right? Like we try to create other stuff to express and so I think, yeah, for me as an artist, Palestinian, when the symbol is necessary, it's nice. When it becomes trendy, it loses its meaning. It's just a trend, just a fashion. Like the Berlinale, for example, we had a call from the BDS to boycott this festival. But then some artists choose to go there with watermelons and symbols. And I think the act of boycott is much stronger than, Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Do you want to add something on it?
I do think very highly of BDS. And I also think highly of insisting on using symbols and slogans that are criminalized. I've seen red triangles here as earrings. Shout out to you. You know who you are. The thing is just, it's so obnoxious for a government to decide that from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is now illegal, no cops here. But I think it's such a powerful act to continue using that slogan, because the criminalization of that is also something that happened decades ago, and people had resisted decades ago as well. I think we just need to stick together. We need to be there. We need to show up. The protest last weekend was incredible. Like the first time where I felt, I mean, for Berlin, it's quite sad to see only 100 people show up at the protest. But I think now even Germans or those who might have been too scared are okay to show up in numbers and to collaborate and to just be bigger numbers, be mass, be just present, you know. And like one of the last events that we had at Oyoun was with Sarah Schulman from ACT UP. I don't know if anyone is aware of her. She's also part of the Jewish Voice for Peace International. And someone asked a question similar to that and was like, okay, what can we do? Like, which symbols do we use? Which languages do we use? And she's like, actually, the easiest way is to just go with BDS, and then also remember that you have to be able to collaborate with people even though you might disagree. If you can get someone to go on board, get them on board. We need bigger numbers. We need to be bigger in presence, and we need to show those who criminalize our existence or symbols that you can still continue, because they can't arrest us all, they can't prohibit them all, they can't criminalize all of that. And she also said something which in a podcast later, she said, and I think, I mean, she's a lesbian, she's a like queer rights activist, and she said in her neighborhood there's a church that is against abortion. So she's like, okay, she doesn't want to collaborate with that church, but the same church prohibits and steps up for people who were deported. So she's like, we have to get them on board still. And I think that's one thing that we claim, I feel like we fail in Berlin specifically, or in Germany, is the divisiveness, the divide and conquer that we have in ourselves practiced and opposed on our people within the community. And I think it's important that we just overlook our ego and collaborate, which I think is great. Like, this is a Greek like anarchist event, and like I would not have come across that like had you not reached out. And I think the more the merrier. We can find intersections and we can find ways to move forward and basically not dismantle the system from within. It's not possible, but to find ways to at least like irritate them, you know?
I believe artists are not here only to make great paintings and decoration. We used to use also symbols, because some people, they pray to symbols, they believe in symbols, and some people are not. So we have to speak sometimes with their language. Not to make them feel bad, but we have to say, we don't have to be afraid, we don't have to go back, neither a small step. I think we have to continue to work of our freedom of expression of art.
Any more questions?
Hi. Thank you so much. I just wanted to add something for everybody who is white in this audience, because I realized when I use my privilege of whiteness and just irritate white spaces, like in Prenzlauer Berg or wherever, with wearing a keffiyeh and just like irritating them, that's quite easy to do. And I still have white people telling me, oh my God, that's a really sweet watermelon. And then I'm really sweet smiling and saying, yeah, and do you know that it's for Palestine? And then you see their faces froze. And I think we can do much more. And I just wanted to especially encourage everybody who is white here in the audience to just like enjoy irritating Berlin safe white spaces, especially in summer. That's a lot of fun.
So, hello, I am Christos. I come from Greece. I want to ask you, so I understand and the concerns about, artistic expression in certain countries, or maybe even the host country that happens to be like, maybe it's not ideal, or maybe it's not such a priority for the art community as you would expect. But I'm wondering, is there any other place that, like in your experience, or you imagine that is doing better in this regard, or what is a good example of this kind of on this topic?
I know it's different in Norway. So people, I think this is one of the first events after like October 23 where I get invited to talk, because people feel like when they just touch me, they become anti-Semitic. And it's just, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. But in Norway, people, like politicians, wear a keffiyeh, like in the parliament. They recognized Palestine as a state, and they, like one of the people at this summit that I was talking at was also like a governmental official. It's very unpopular to be pro-Israel. So like artists are generally very comfortable openly supporting the liberation of the Palestinian people and the resistance as a movement as well. This is something that I think in Germany is not, I mean, we're far from it. But yeah, I think Norway. But maybe you know.
No, I just in addition, I think just as an addition of to because to add a little pessimism into all of this, I think that most, if not all, countries and most states have a certain kind of mythology around their existence and around their creation, which for the most part is either totally made up or so warped that it has very little to do with reality. And I think a lot of what is experienced as a kind of repression against freedom of expression has to do with that. So you have that in a country like France as well, where there's another blind spot. Maybe it's the question of Palestine maybe a little bit less, but maybe the question of Algeria a little bit more. And you have this kind of thing in a lot of countries. So what it may for the question of Palestine, what may appear much more open and much more supportive, maybe for something else than turns out to be. It's no, I mean.
So, thank you all for being here again. I want to thank Michael, Lamis, Louna, Christophoros, you too. Exactly. Thank you all. Thank you really all. So art, in any form of expression, since its appearance centuries ago, and the people who expressed through this art and who created, has always served as a witness to every era. So by recording, as you said, your grandparents recording about what happened in Nakba, or depicting something, or singing songs, folk songs about what happened, about good moments or bad moments, that leaves behind a testimony somehow for what was happened or for what is happening now. And in this way, really great works of art have been created throughout history. And this is the duty of art and culture sector, actually, also today, to preserve, to depict, to record what is happening now, and to have it for the next generation, not only for today, but also for tomorrow. So the cultural sector, as also the society, every individual, must stand firm, defend its independence, how institutions like Oyoun are making, or you, Michael, or you, Lamis, or you, Christoph, and every one of us, in order to resist and highlight these difficult times, making visible what others want to silence, actually. And because in the end, what I will hold, so I'll notice, at the end, what is between freedom and state control is only resistance. Resistance in every way. So we have to make resistance, to make more visible, and to fight back in order to irritate, not only to fight, to win the state, but to irritate the state. This is the play. To enjoy it, it's joyful to irritate the state, actually. So resistance and free Palestine, and thank you for being here, and thank you all.